Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. On Thursday, it's an AFC-NFC showdown when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head north to take on the Buffalo Bills. Thursday Night Football, it's on Prime. Tune in early for pregame coverage with TNF tonight. It's the Bucs and the Bills on Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for the 30-day free trial, and you can cancel at any time. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Here's something every football fan should know. You can get anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. Well, almost anything, because you can't get your dream running back for your fantasy team delivered with Uber Eats, but they will deliver flapjacks, tacos, six-packs. Great pass protection? No. Great pizza selection? Yes. Championship defense? No. Deodorant? Yes. Turnovers? No. But turnovers to pastry? Yes. Because that's groceries. You can get those delivered with Uber Eats too. And food from your favorite restaurants and other essentials. So this season, get anything, well, almost anything for game day by ordering on the Uber Eats app. Uber Eats is the official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a Baller.
Welcome in. It's Wednesday, October 25th, back. Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined by Matthew Betz and Jason Moore.
How's it going? We've got a couple of arch enemies here, and I'm happy to be on the show. I miss when I'm not here. Every other week is just a sad time for me.
Do you listen in when you're not on the show, Jason?
No, I would never. I would never listen to a show I'm not on. No, I try to catch it as often as I can. It's good advice. I like to learn as much as I like to teach.
Love it.
Yeah, I feel like this show is it's a different kind of pace than what we usually do on the main show. And we get to talk about tons of things that I don't know if we don't have time. We just it's hard to fit everything into a week, especially when you're in the weekly grind. But this might be one of my favorite shows we do this entire season for Dynasty. I'm pretty hyped. I think all three of us are.
Yeah, I love the show.
I have been looking forward to this episode since 2 weeks ago. We did a redraft on the main show after I think 3 or 4 weeks, and I couldn't believe how insightful that was and how difficult some of those decisions were when push came to shove, and it was I'm staring down these two players. Which one would I really actually draft? And so then we brought up the fact we're going to do that on the Dynasty podcast, and I mean toiling and deciding and researching and looking at all these players and being which one would I really, really take? There's groups of 5 wide receivers to me, 2 running backs, where it's I don't know. But we'll get into that.
It's really tough. I was talking to Betz earlier. It's like this game of chicken where we're trying to look at each other and just okay, who's going to go first? Who's going to be the one to go Puka Nacua? Where does Puka go? Because when we did this draft back in May, just imagine this. Puka was not in the first 2 rounds, guys, in anyone's draft.
Yeah. Just that's how it went. Also, Kendra Miller was a hot name at the time. Marvin Mims, Tank Bigsby. Things have changed. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of see where this goes. And like you said, the in-season grind, on a week-to-week basis, makes it so difficult to just take a step back and breathe for a second and kind of assess these rookies, not from a week-to-week standpoint, but from a dynasty standpoint. So this exercise, I think, is going to be very valuable today. I'm very excited to see where you guys have all these rookies ranked.
So we'll do a 2-round rookie draft redo, only 7 weeks into the season. So there's a lot we know, a lot we don't know. We'll get into that in just a second. But I want to mention jointhefoot.com. If you want to be a member of our Foot Clan, this is the place to be. And I wanted to specifically highlight a couple of tools that, if you're a member of really the greatest group of all time, you get to access what I look at when I look at my matchups every single week and even making dynasty decisions. So right now on one of my dynasty teams earlier today, I was making trades based off our strength of schedule and our stream finder that shows here's what teams have done defensively against this position. Here's what you could look at moving forward. And over the last couple of years, we've kind of honed in this tool. Jason has been a big proponent of our scheduled adjusted fantasy points, and that gives you so much more information than just raw points. So Jason, why don't you quickly explain schedule adjusted, because we reference that a lot.
Yeah, and people should be using it. So like if you're listening and you are using any of our tools on the website where you're looking up matchups and what's a good play this week, who should I trust over who, one of the best stats that we've seen kind of emerge over the last 3 or 4 years is schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed above opponents' expectation. It's like this, we just call it schedule adjusted, but essentially what it's doing is it's not just looking at, well, this team gives up the most fantasy points to running backs. It's like, okay, well, they played all the best running backs, and that makes sense. The better running backs are going to score more. Or is it really like they give up far more fantasy points than the average fantasy points scored of the players they've faced? And once you get into about 2 weeks ago and on, schedule-adjusted fantasy points as far as a defensive metric and where to target and how to make start-sit decisions, that is probably the one metric I look at the most. And yeah, you can use it in a number of ways. You can use it in looking at trades and see like, oh, this really isn't as bad as we thought, or it's way better than we think. But you can also look at it for, like you said, strength of schedule. We've got all those tools in the Foot Clan. Strength of schedule is great, where it's like you can go and look and say who's got a good fantasy schedule for the playoffs, but then you click that schedule adjusted button. And personally, I mean, I'm always going to default to schedule adjusted. It is a more accurate, more detailed, much more difficult to acquire type of information that is very valuable. I use it in everything I do for fantasy football.
Yeah, I love it too. If you're a contender right now in Dynasty and you're going to the playoffs, use the tool and kind of see are there veterans I can add to my roster that have already been valuable, that a team that's rebuilding might want to get out of. You can go get and set up for success. Like if you're a contender and you need running back help, the Chargers, number one, when you look at the rest of the season through week 17, schedule adjusted, someone might have
also
Eckler,
number one,
and they're on the outside looking in.
It's rest of the season, number one schedule adjusted. It's also number one schedule adjusted in the fantasy playoffs, those 3 weeks. So, I mean, that is definitely one to target. So I would imagine most of the listeners here are already subscribed, but if you're not, jointhefoot.com. You can join up for all the premium resources. It's way more than just this one tool. It's like 100 tools.
Yeah, tons of great stuff. Extra podcasts, extra Footcast, Injury Blitz from Betz, another podcast. So great stuff at jointhefoot.com. But if you're here, in just a second, we're going to talk rookies. But I wanted to pause because I wanted us to make an observation for the people about what happened in week 7, maybe something behind the scenes that maybe they didn't notice, because snap counts change. And in Dynasty, you're trying to make transactions right now. So this is my quick question for us before we get into our rookie redraft. What is one snap count observation over the last week or so that you are actively making moves in your leagues for? So hey, I saw this happen behind the scenes and this is kind of increases players. So Betz, I will let you go first. A player with snap counts moving in the right direction. Yeah,
we're going to see where this guy goes in the draft today. If he goes in top 2 rounds, I think he will, is Rashee Rice. So I wanted to pick a rookie and just kind of keep it, on theme here. Look, there was a opportunity, I think, last week where you laugh, but Justin Watson was out. And no, he's not earning targets at a high rate, but he is playing a ton for the Chiefs. And so I kind of wanted to see what happens with Rashee Rice. He was already trending in the right direction for the last 2 or 3 weeks in terms of his route rate when he's on the field, earning targets at extremely high level, coming off a season high 59% of the snaps. And the last 3 weeks, his route rate was 23%, 50%, 65% last week against the Chargers. And the efficiency metrics are just crazy. So I was kind of already noticing, look, it's just a ragtag group at wide receiver. We've been saying that since Tyreek Hill left. But if there's one guy that's going to emerge, it is Rashee Rice. And I've been trying to go out and actively kind of get him on my dynasty squads, last week and this week. And I think the window for that to happen is going to slam shut pretty quickly if this trend continues. So Rashee Rice certainly on the rise in the Chiefs offense.
And that's somebody that, Jason, you don't have to take the early victory lap, but you were much higher than most people on Rashee Rice.
Yeah,
coming in.
I thought his film was okay, was good, positive. He wasn't someone I was so bullish on that I was like, oh, he's going to be a superstar. I think the process with Rashee Rice was, don't just get burned out on the fact that it didn't work with Sky Moore and it didn't work with Mecole Hardman and it didn't work. Like, you still have to keep taking shots on finding the number one wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes. And the fact that what we saw from Sky Moore was a lot of failed opportunity said it's never going to happen for him. Like, there are outlier cases where someone plays a significant amount for several years and then gets better. But for the most part, if you get the opportunities that Sky Moore had and you do what he did with them, with the best quarterback in the history of the planet, it's probably not going to work out. And so it really hasn't. Rashee Rice looks good, and I think that is a perfect dynasty trade for target because he really hasn't broken out yet. And the writing is a little bit on the wall. I mean, it's in chalk, but it's like you can start to see it, where it's like, okay, he could become the 1A in the wide receiver room. For me, my snap count observation is 2 weeks old. I wasn't here 2 weeks ago. That was Mike on the show. They were on bye this week, but for dynasty purposes, it's the split we've been seeing with Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary. This last week, Devin Singletary had the majority of the snaps, and in preseason this year, there was so much hype for the way that Dameon Pierce was going to be used. And in dynasty leagues, Dameon Pierce, as a young, talented running back on what appears now to be an up-and-coming offense, is like, okay, all right, this is what you're looking for in Dynasty. And I say, no, it's not. No, it is absolutely not. In the preseason time, I think this was even before this Dynasty pod existed, I did a bunch of research on historical long-term value of fourth-round running backs who were great their rookie year, which that's what Dameon Pierce was. He was a fourth-round running back who was great his rookie year. In fairness to him, he was the best fourth-round rookie running back that I had in all my data that I was accumulating over the last 20 years. And what it turned out was like the vast, vast majority of them were worse in year two, and their careers never became what you thought it was going to become. Sometimes you had like a Jordan Howard where it was like, okay, all right, he had a couple years of relevance. But a lot of times you had some of the best examples of like Jeremy Langford. It's hard for people to remember that name because he just vanished. But he was the hotness after his rookie year. I think right now today, Dameon Pierce holds a lot of dynasty value. You're not having to try to find a way to trade him or dump him before. I think he can net you a lot. People are looking for young stud running backs, and he projects to possibly be one. But with what I've seen from the snap counts and that historical data, the fact that they've got, they're going to have good draft capital going forward. I don't think Dameon Pierce is going to be a long-term great fantasy asset. So I would capitalize on the hype of his rookie year and a couple good weeks this season and see what you can get for him.
Yeah, because Singletary, before the bye, just quietly, he saw season high in snaps, his routes, opportunities, and the routes part is what is, I think, scary because in preseason, like we were like, man, if Pierce is going to get all of this work, like he's a borderline RB1, like that's kind of workload that you were going to get. And now it's scary. So if you were a Dameon Pierce manager, I'm assuming, Jason, you're saying like you can't really get what he's worth. Like he's probably just a hold for now, but are you saying you could try to get Singletary on the cheap? Oh,
Singletary, yes. I think Singletary is someone that I don't care about hardly at all. This isn't pro Singletary so much as it is. I believe that this is going to be an offense this year that doesn't score a ton of rushing touchdowns. The workload will be split closer to 50-50 than we like for fantasy purposes, barring injury to either guy. I think that both guys are going to let you down more often than not. And so I'm not looking to trade for Devin Singletary. I just want to capitalize on the youth and opportunity and timeline of what you can get out of Dameon Pierce.
I, for one, am shocked that it has turned this way with Dameon Pierce. I mean, it is just so unforeseen. I could never have seen this. This is just not on my radar, guys.
He's been waiting for this moment for the last year and a half since Dameon Pierce entered the NFL.
You were the OG hater.
I try to give people, I took the L in this preseason saying, like, maybe I was just wrong. And I didn't draft him anywhere. I mean, come on, I wasn't going to do that. But the usage looked like it was somebody that you could at least count on as an RB2, maybe RB1 type weeks, but you're just not getting those at all. And the lack of passing game. It is weird because the offense is something that we are encouraged by, right? Like, we like CJ Stroud. We like what he's doing. We like the way they're moving the ball, but it's kind of centered around the wide receivers, and who cares about Pierce? So I wanted to give a running back that I think you can try to acquire right now. He's coming off a big week, so maybe it's something that is going to cost you a little bit more, but the Gus Edwards, I wanted to give you some behind-the-scenes numbers with his snaps because it's still a 50-50 split with Justice Hill. Last week it was 30 snaps for Edwards, 30 for Hill. The routes are kind of skewed in Justice Hill's favor, and Gus Edwards had that monster reception that we'll never be able to replicate that again, right?
Never.
Like 80 yards, broken play, cool play. But what I want to say is that Gus is seeing all of the carries inside the 5, which is what we care about. And Justice Hill is also pass blocking a ton. 25% of his passing plays, 34% of true pass sets, according to PFF. In other words, Justice Hill, you can look at his routes, you can look at his pass plays and his snaps, and it's almost like you can take out a third of them. They don't even matter. He's being asked to block. Who cares? Okay? They don't even target the running back that much. The early down production is what I care about, and you're seeing that Gus Edwards is getting a touch on 40% of his snaps. That's like the same as Mostert or Eckler or Saquon. Like, he's getting used when he's on the field. So I think Gus Edwards is a fine low-end RB2 that you're going to get some weeks where he gets in the end zone, and it's an offense that you started to see last week, like, wow, this offense is fun, and they can move the ball. They did it against the Lions. So what do you guys think about Gus as like a target right now if you are running back needy?
I think he's a great target, and I disagree with what you said earlier that because he's coming off a big week, it's going to cost you. Okay. People aren't clamoring for Gus Edwards in dynasty leagues. He's just a solid running back that you feel like is a 1-year rental, and you're not even sure that he's the dude. But he is going to score enough fantasy points to help, bye weeks and those situations, flex starting decisions where it's like, oh yeah, he helped me get a win here and a win that week, and I made the playoffs. If you can go trade cheap for him, if you're a contending team, I think that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I was gonna say you said you might have to pay up for him, I was like, man, what does Gus Edwards cost you in a dynasty league? Like,
well, that's what I'm
2/3.
I'm trying to talk this
late
out.
Second, maybe. Like, that's at most what you'll have to pay, I think, for Gus Edwards.
So you're fine with a late second?
Yeah. If I'm a contending team and I need running backs, that'll get it done, I think.
Okay, because I'm a contending team in a couple dynasty leagues. I put out some offers, and it was the second. And I went back and forth like, okay, is he just a 1-year rental, like Jason said? If Jason gets this player ahead of me in a league, I will be very mad. But Gus Edwards, I think, is a pretty good candidate.
I've got to go make an offer real quick. Not even to get him. I don't need him because of how great my team is, but I want to keep him from you.
There you go. You can do that. Let's take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. On Thursday, it's an AFC-NFC showdown when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head north to take on the Buffalo Bills. Thursday Night Football, it's on Prime. Tune in early for pregame coverage with TNF tonight. It's the Bucs and the Bills on Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for the 30-day free trial, and you can cancel at any time. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Okay, football season is finally here, and here's one thing every fan should know. You can get anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. Well, almost anything, because no, you can't get your dream running back for your fantasy team delivered with Uber Eats. But flapjacks, baby back ribs, and a cold six-pack, yeah, you can definitely get those. Great pass protection? That's a no. Great pizza selection from your favorite places? Yes. Championship defense? Nope. Deodorant? Yep. A well-executed fake punt? No. Delicious fresh produce? Yes. Game-clinching turnovers? No. But pastry turnovers, you know, the kind with delicious apple filling? Oh, yeah. Because that's groceries, and get those delivered with Uber Eats, too, along with food from your favorite restaurants and other essentials. And the best part? You can get it all without missing a second of the action on your TV. So this football season, stay planted on your couch and get anything, well, almost anything you need for game day by ordering on the Uber Eats app. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
All right, boys, I need you to gird your loins, because this is a rookie draft redo, which is very hard to say. And in just a second, guys, we're going to go through our picks that we made in May. We're going to compare, and then we're going to go 1-1. So let's get ready.
Hey, rookie, welcome to the NFL.
All right, if you remember, back in May, we did a rookie draft on this show, and it went Mike, me, Jason, and then Betz. So Mike's not here on this show, but for each pick, I'll go through and say this is what this player was picked at in the first draft, and then we'll go on the clock. So this time, the order will be Jason, Betz, and then myself, and we will kind of go in that order. And guys, when you make your picks, feel free to share how stressed out you might be, because it is really hard. And it's really hard to take the information we've had in the past and then compare with this is how I feel 7 weeks in, while also thinking about this is a dynasty like outlook. So we're not just saying this is what this player's done. So you have to weigh all of those things right now. So
the hardest player, I'll go right now and just say the hardest player for me by far is JSN. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I could see making an argument that he should still be number 2. I could see him being down at like 7 because we haven't seen it so far, but you've got to have a long-term outlook in Dynasty, so that's interesting. You said we're starting at 1?
We are starting at 1.
And I get
Bijan went 1. Yeah, and it's you.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'll keep Bijan. I'll take Bijan Robinson at number 1. That is the easiest pick of all time.
Do you think, so we'll just talk real quick. So this past weekend, lots of stuff about what did they know, what should they have shared about the injury report. If you got 1 carry for 3 yards on your fantasy team, I'm sorry. I was there as well. Jason, you felt that and you still won
yes,
in Dynasty.
Yes.
So far in points per game, Bijan is the RB11. Would you guys say, based on expectations, has he disappointed you if you were his manager for what he's done for this season?
I think if you're talking about his redraft ADP, probably a little, but he's still been great. And he's getting that passing down work, but he was drafted as a top 5 running back, right, in redraft circles. So if you had that expectation for your dynasty squad, I think he's been a little disappointing, relatively speaking, because you had that range of outcomes where he just ices Tyler Algier and he's getting everything. But that's not happening, and Tyler Algier is getting plenty of work around the goal line and sort of thing. So I think a little he's disappointed, but from a dynasty perspective, I would still have zero concerns.
Jason, are you a little underwhelmed, just slightly?
Yeah, I mean, what you originally asked was, are you disappointed based on your expectations? No. Based on your hopes, yes. He's still been an RB1 in points per game, so your expectation isn't destroyed yet, and you think as a rookie it's going to be better, as it goes on than right off the bat to start the season. But, you hope that you've got, a top 3 guy, and you don't have a top 3 guy yet. But everything you've seen, no, I don't think there's any disappointment in the player. Like, I don't think fantasy managers would go back and undo in either redraft or dynasty drafting Bijan Robinson this year. So that answers the question. No, we're not disappointed. We just want more.
I'm with you. I traded for him after week 2 in a redraft league, and I'm still wanting more. We're waiting for that first rushing touchdown, by the way. Still knocking on the door, but he's second among all running backs in receptions. So if you knew that going into the draft, you'd be super happy. So Bijan, I think we all thought he would stay 101. Betz, you are up next at the 102, and back in May, I took JSN at this spot.
Yeah, there's a bunch of names I had in consideration, honestly. The wide receivers are all here. JSN, Puka Nacua has been incredible. But I kept thinking about kind of the landscape in Dynasty and needing difference-making running backs. You've got Bijan, you've got Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, and then the other half is sort of just aging out, right? Like Austin Eckler's another year older, Derrick Henry's on his last leg, and you need these difference-making backs. So I'm going to take Jahmyr Gibbs here. I know it's been a slow start to the year, and we all spent all offseason talking about, well, what if Jahmyr Gibbs gets hurt? How good can David Montgomery be? What if David Montgomery gets hurt? How good can Jahmyr Gibbs be? And we've seen that this past week. So I am staying with the process here of the 12th overall pick. I don't think this is a DeAndre Swift situation for them. I think they actually like this guy. They want to get him involved. And I think it'll happen, year over year. Montgomery isn't going away. I'm not saying that, but he is explosive, and I love the draft capital. So I'm going to lean with Jahmyr Gibbs.
I wish you wouldn't have taken him there because he would have been an easy pick at the 103.
Yep.
Really?
Oh yeah,
I think so.
For me, I mean that's who I wanted, Jason.
Okay.
I wanted to take Gibbs.
So,
but
where would you have him, Jason?
Since this is just a conversation to have more debate, right now I have Jahmyr Gibbs much lower in my personal rankings, and I think it would really shock you guys. I have him, and this isn't an anti-Jahmyr Gibbs. Please don't hear that. I'm not saying Jahmyr Gibbs is a bust. He's not going to have value or relevance. But for me, if I'm doing it over, he's my what number overall do you think he is?
I'm going to guess 8.
There's
7.
Okay.
How?
I don't agree with that, obviously.
Sure. Here's how. One, I value stud wide receivers over stud running backs in Dynasty, longer shelf life. So I think there are 5 great wide receivers that I want desperately in Dynasty. And if I was drafting, a startup right now, I would take all those wide receivers over the running back. So that's the biggest, most, okay, you could have a debate just positionally. But the real funny debate, which I had to ask Andy. Andy was leaving the studio. I go, hey, I want to make sure I'm not crazy here. I asked him a question. He actually had the same answer as me, and it was surprising, but I like Devon Achane more than Jahmyr Gibbs. They both have draft capital. No, Devon Achane does not have the number 12 overall draft capital, but we've already seen that is not forcing Jahmyr Gibbs into the workhorse bell cow role that historically a top 15 type of drafted running back does. Only injury is allowing him to be there. And these are both undersized, explosive athletes, right? And I think that the system that Achane fits in with the Miami Dolphins, with an aging, expiring, Mostert and Jeff Wilson and single-year contracts, and it's going to be Achane's offense in the running game, I think, in the near future. So it's close. I love both players. This is not an anti-Jahmyr Gibbs situation, but I think Devon Achane is going to have a better fantasy career than Jahmyr Gibbs.
I can see that case because right now my 3 and 4 I feel like are like a and B, and Achane was one of those. So I'm still deciding on who it is. So I'm totally fine with where that is.
We have to tell us right now, Kyle.
Well, hold on. I just want to give some thoughts with Gibbs because you saw this past week him get targeted a ton. He's been targeted on 25.5% of his routes. So if you're getting that type of usage, you're getting a wide receiver as well. That's the kind of player you're getting. So I don't think Jason's saying anything against Gibbs. He just would prefer Achane. So was it not even close for you, Betz? I was with you where I thought it was Bijan Gibbs as a tier of its own still.
Oh, I considered strongly Puka Nacua here, Jordan Addison. This is a fun class because you can go a number of directions and you can make an argument. Nacua is putting up outrageous production next to Cooper Kupp, right? As a rookie, as a 5th or 6th round rookie, whatever he was. Flowers looks there's so many guys. So for me, it was between Puka, Jordan Addison, and Jahmyr Gibbs.
So I have the third pick, and this is where Gibbs went at our draft in May. And I went back and forth. I think I would go with the wide receiver here, and just so Jason can go to town on Achane if he wants. But I would take Jordan Addison. I understand there's a little recency bias by what he did Monday. I also don't know who his quarterback will be next year, so that is something to consider. Like, who's his quarterback next year? Do you guys have any thoughts?
I think that there is a really strong possibility that it is not Kirk Cousins. So, I mean, that when we were talking, I mean, we're not like revealing these names here. Like,
no.
I wonder who else is in the top tier here. When you're looking at what I think is 5 great wide receivers here in Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, and Puka Nacua, so 4. It's really, really difficult to have a clear-cut winner there. You've got the production insanity from Puka, who has the least draft capital. You have the lack of production from JSN, who has the highest draft capital, and you see a future where his depth chart is going to get better for him over time. Zay Flowers, well, he's got Lamar Jackson, whereas Jordan Addison, he doesn't have a quarterback locked in for the future. So it's just a matter of when I was doing this and trying to figure out like what is my order going to be, I went talent. In the end, I thought, who do I think out of these 4, because you can make great arguments, who do I think is the most talented? And that's kind of how I tried to sort them out.
Yeah, and that's kind of been something we've talked about a lot on this show, is like situation's going to change, choose talent. So I will take Jordan Addison at the 103. I feel safe with him. You could argue that there's wide receivers with higher ceilings, but I'll take Jordan Addison at the 103, which is where we took him in May. He's the 104. So Jason, you're now up at 104.
At 104, I'm gonna do it so that, because the difficulty of deciding which wide receiver to take, I get to bypass by taking Devon Achane, who I believe is going to be, an outstanding asset. We've seen him in such a short time span be a week-winning running back multiple weeks in a row in an offense that fits his abilities perfectly. Young, committed, great offense. So I'm taking the track superstar in Devon Achane.
All right. Betz, you have a impossible decision. And just so you know, this is where your boy QJ went but way back in May, which
huge.
It makes sense, right? It makes sense that he would have gone here. I'm assuming he's not on the board for you.
Yeah, QJ is not the pick currently. I hate that Jason took Achane because I was hoping that I could just take whichever wide receiver he did not take and not look like an idiot when I make this decision, because it's the obvious, right? Draft capital, as we said, with JSN, or the insane early production from Puka Nacua, and I'm going to take Puka Nacua. What he is doing is just unreal for a rookie. And when you see these guys flash in targets per out run, yards per out run at an elite level as rookies, it's usually sticky moving forward. Now, everything was great. Like, Cooper Kupp was out. Stafford is throwing at an outrageous rate. Like, those things probably are going to change short term, but give me the guy who has shown he can absolutely do it in the NFL with or without Cooper Kupp on the field.
I don't blame you at all. And the targets per out run are awesome. 29%, 2.81 yards per out run. I feel like it's kind of like measuring your expectations of what he can be moving forward, because I don't think you're going to say he's going to be a wide receiver 1 every single year. But based on his start this year, it's like you're probably going to bet on this guy finishing in the top 10 or top 12 based on what he's done so far. But, if he's a solid wide receiver 2 in fantasy, you would be very happy with that right now. And you didn't have to draft him there. Like, that's the beauty. We're doing a redraft, but no one had to draft Puka Nacua here. You got him in the 3rd round, or you picked him up or whatever. So, it's worth the debate. I would have taken Jackson Smith and Jigba, and that's who I'll take here because the talent's there. We're actually seeing an increase in the role. Please let him get downfield. Like, just the beginning of that game against Arizona this past week, it was like, oh, they understand that this guy can actually cut up people in the intermediate area and he was booking, and then it kind of slowed down in the second half. I don't really know what happened. Maybe Jason, you were watching, but like, I feel like the second half of that game just kind of slogged, and they just weren't attacking Seattle.
Yeah, that's been pretty common. I feel like this year the second half of games haven't really gone as well. But I agree with you that JSN is not someone like QJ, Quentin Johnston, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Neither one have had great rookie years so far. I mean, we had a touchdown and a kind of hopeful breakout game this last week, but for the most part, neither of them have done great things, whereas we've seen Jordan Addison, we've seen Zay Flowers, we've seen Puka Nacua really show off. But JSN is great. And if you want to take him at the 102, believing in his future as the highest ceiling type of player, I'm fine with that. For the record, it was painstaking for me, but my personal rankings, when I looked at my top three, they became Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane, Puka Nacua. And so that 2 and 3 was pretty wild to see. It just
as we all thought it would be, right?
Yeah, just as we all thought it would be. This is an easy pick for me at 7. I think there is a tier break, a clear and utter gulf between the top 7. Like the top 7 will always be these 7. It will always be Bijan, Devon Achane, Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, Jahmyr Gibbs, in whatever order you want, and Zay Flowers.
Yes.
He's shown out. He's looked great. He's got first-round draft capital. He's got Lamar Jackson. And so I don't believe in Rashad Bateman anymore. I don't know that that's ever going to be a thing. I don't believe in Odell Beckham. So you're hoping that this offense starts clicking. And at the very least, we've already seen Hollywood Brown with Lamar Jackson and a lower passing volume be pretty good when it's Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown. So if he comes into that number 1 wide receiver role, even if he's the number 2 target in the offense, really, really good for fantasy for a long time, tied to a great organization. I mean, this is the thing. You could argue, we were talking about it in the studio, I think I think both Mike and Andy, and I don't want to put words in their mouth. I know I'm almost positive it was Mike, and I think it was Andy as well. Zay Flowers was their number 1 wide receiver. So they would take Zay Flowers over Addison because of the quarterback situation, over JSN because of what we've seen so far, over Puka. So I'm not that way, but these top 7, that's tier break. Now it starts getting like really, really interesting,
right?
Or difficult.
Yeah, I felt like Flowers was the last person I had 2 in mind, and it is interesting. Like if you wanted to take Flowers at 3, I get it. Like I get if you're just like interested in saying high floor, he's going to be with Lamar. Betz, you're up at the 108. This is where Dalton Kincaid went back in May.
Yeah, this does feel like the worst spot to be in the draft because now I start the tough decision making, and I've actually kind of flip-flopped a couple times as I'm sitting here thinking about it. I'm going to go with Tank Dell, who I'm normally not a huge fan of undersized wide receivers, but the fact is this guy is just good. Like you go back to his college production, it's great. Comes out as a rookie, it's a slow burn. Doesn't get on the field right away, but as soon as he gets his opportunity, capitalizes. The yards per route run is great. We like CJ Stroud and the passing attack. So I'm going to go with Tank Dell here. I usually don't do this with, like they said, these smaller wide receivers, but he has flashed in a big way.
Yeah, 2.36 yards per route run is pretty awesome. And I think we're a little skewed because he hasn't been on the field last 2 weeks, concussion, on bye. But in a full PPR, I think he belongs in the first round or a fringe first round. It might be a little higher than what I would like. Were you debating between any names right here?
Yeah, so for me, it was kind of 3 decisions, or 3 players. Tank Dell, I thought about Anthony Richardson just given the insane ceiling he's shown, and then actually Sam Laporta, which I know tight ends in the first round typically are not ideal for us as far as how we play, but the guy's just doing it, and he's producing in a big way, and you don't see that from rookie tight ends very often. So those are the 3 names that I considered.
Okay, so I actually have Sam Laporta as my next on my board, and yeah, 23% yards per route run, or 23% targets per route run for a tight end. Any tight end is awesome. For a rookie tight end, that's like unheard of that we're getting that type of production. So I think he can be like a difference maker tight end. Usually we like to wait, but I'm gonna take Sam Laporta here. There's a couple wide receivers that I think you could also go in that direction, but yeah, I'm gonna take Laporta here. I think the quarterbacks in a one quarterback league, which is what we're doing, are also in play. Richardson, Stroud at the end of the first round, but I'll take Laporta.
Yeah, Laporta was my number 8 player as well. Once you're past those top 7, I think he has earned the right. I mean, he's great right now in redraft. So if you're already great in redraft at a difficult-to-get position, you can't make an argument of, well, Dynasty, we don't take – he's doing it. He's shown flashes. He's from tight end U. So, yeah, I've got Sam Laporta 8. I think we're all in sync there. I do have the third player that Betz mentioned as my number 9 player. So am I on the – I'm up,
You're
right?
at the 110.
Okay, so I'll take my number 9 player here, and that is Anthony Richardson. He's the quarterback I want in a Dynasty League. Yeah, his season is over. That stinks. We've seen brilliant flashes from C.J. Stroud. He looks like he's going to be the real deal. But rookie year – this season, C.J. Stroud's not winning you a championship. He's just looking really good. He might be a flex option. Maybe you can get a win here or there because you had a different way to go. But you're hoping that C.J. Stroud has like a really nice future, long-term, Kirk Cousins type of fantasy relevance. If he's not winning you a championship this year, I want a guy that can win me a championship. Anthony Richardson can win you a championship. He looked unbelievably great. And coming in next year, Betz, what's your medical thoughts on the timeline as far as, where he got surgery, coming in next year? Will he be fully healthy, ready to go?
Yeah, he'll be ready by the summer to do everything and ramp up from there. So he'll enter 2024 offseason with probably a little bit of limitation, like early, like March-ish range. But by the time we get to summer and training camp, he will be full go.
All right, Betz, you're up at the 111, which is where Jason took Rashee Rice back in May.
Yeah, we're going to keep it the same. He is the pick here. I'm going to take Rashee Rice. Talked about it at the top of the show with just the underlying efficiency numbers trending in the right direction. And, when we think about draft capital, like we kind of have to remind ourselves, this guy went in the second round to a Pat Mahomes offense, and everyone that he's playing with just can't earn targets besides Travis Kelce. So Rashee Rice, to me, has shown enough that he deserves to go in round 1.
Yep, I'd agree. It's been one of those things where every single week involved more. You love to see that kind of stuff. 27% targets per outrun. He's been pretty great. So I'm at the end of the first round, and I think that you could take CJ Stroud here. There's a couple wide receivers that are interesting. I just don't know their role, so I can't see the future. I think, so I'm not the same team, but I think I would take Dalton Kincaid here. I think this team won't, Gabe Davis probably isn't going to be re-upped with this team. He's a free agent this year. And it seems like Dalton Kincaid can easily morph into the second target on this team. He saw 8 targets this past week. We know that Knox is out, for the next 4 games. So I think Dalton Kincaid as a pass catcher, not just as a tight end, like as a, wide receiver, tight end blend, I think he can come in his own. So he belongs somewhere this fringe end of the first, beginning of the second. So would you guys have gone different there?
At this point, personally, I think that there's like a smorgasbord of guys you could argue for. Dalton Kincaid is certainly in that list. I think there's like 5 or 6 players here that are all debatable, solid options that are in the same tier. So I'm not excited personally to be to even have right now. If I'm at this spot, I'm trying to trade back 3 or 4 spots, 5 spots, accumulate future draft capital, because I look at tiers and I say, whether I get this guy or that guy or this guy or that guy or this guy or that guy, I like them all the same. So I'm just going to stick with what my rankings were. Once I get out of known commodities, and I think we're kind of out of known. We've got flashes, we've got pathways of really good options. I would have absolutely taken Rashee Rice there. But most of the people left on my list just have some pretty big question marks, even with excitement. But there's no real question mark to me about CJ Stroud. He has proven that he's going to be a valuable player for a long time in this league. Already thrown over 300 yards tons of times for a rookie. So I'll take C.J. Stroud and play it a little safe here if I've got to retain this pick and not trade back.
I love it. I thought about him, and I'll just say this. What I love about Stroud is the things we loved about him in college. You're seeing that in the pros, where it's just over and over again in the intermediate area of the field. He's already one of the best in the league this year in throws in the 10 to 19 yard range. So Tank Dell, Nico Collins, you love it. So CJ Stroud is Jason's pick at 201. Betz, you were up at 202.
Yeah, kind of like Jason said, tough spot in the draft. I think there's a couple names that are in play here. I'm interested to see where we get Quentin Johnston to go, but I'm going to take a guy that I think collectively we were all pretty down on, and this guy is just making us look silly, or making me look silly. It's Josh Downs, who, for the smaller, third round or whatever he was, draft capital, historically doesn't work out, but the guy has just stepped onto the field and done it and earned targets and popped in a big way. And Michael Pittman is a pending free agent. Is that right, Kyle?
That is correct. He'll get
So
the
yes,
bag.
he's going to get re-signed
for sure. But we saw him do it with Gardner Minshew. We saw him flash a little bit with Anthony Richardson. So I think Josh Downs deserves to go here at the top of the second round.
Who knew that Jason Moore would be at a spot in redraft this year where he's playing Josh Downs every single week?
Yeah, it was a good play. Played him a couple leagues this last week, and I'm so happy you took him here, Betz, because he deserves to go here. He's shown enough to take the shot on him, and I wouldn't do it. It's against my religion. So, you're up, right,
Yeah,
Kyle?
I'm going to take a quick break because we got to think about this. I mean, I've got 3 or 4 guys, so I'm going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. This Thursday, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sail into Buffalo to take on the Bills. Not a Prime member? Sign up for a 30-day free trial to stream the game. Live from Buffalo, it's the Buccaneers and the Bills on Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Okay, football season is finally here, and here's one thing every fan should know. You can get anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. Well, almost anything, because no, you can't get your dream running back for your fantasy football team delivered with Uber Eats, but flapjacks, baby back ribs, a cold six-pack, you can definitely get those. Great pass protection? No. Great pizza selection? Yes. Championship defense? No. Deodorant? Yes. A well-executed fake punt? No. Delicious fresh produce? Yes. Game-clinching turnovers? No. But pastry turnovers? The kind with the delicious apple filling? Yes. Because that's groceries. And you can get those delivered with Uber Eats too, along with food from your favorite restaurants and other essentials. And the best part, you can get it all without missing a second of the action on your TV. So this football season, stay planted on your couch and get anything, well, almost anything you need for game day by ordering on the Uber Eats app. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
All right, we're back. We're in the second round at the 203. This is where Bryce Young went back in May, and I can just tell you right now, he's probably not the pick here for me. I'm deciding between a massive upside player like Marvin Mims, who we've basically seen run 10 routes a game, and then I'm still interested in Zach Charbonnet. I think that we haven't seen enough touches, but we like this running game. He could pop if something happens. It's just so hard to see what his playing time can be. So I go back and forth between those, but I will go Marvin Mims, shoot for the moon. I mean, Jerry Jeudy won't be on this team. Nobody likes him. So I will take Marvin Mims here at the 203.
Yeah, the two most interesting names to me as far as like where do they go, where do they fall, and I know where I have them in my personal rankings are Quentin Johnston and Zach Charbonnet. You can't love Zach Charbonnet more than I love Zach Charbonnet. He is a great running back. He really is. But we've seen this with the Seahawks before. They're loyal to the incumbent, and Kenneth Walker has been awesome. There's no reason not to be. Just because your backup is great doesn't mean that you don't give Kenneth Walker the ball. And so I worry that Zach Charbonnet was drafted into a place and time and role where he will retain and succeed in a backup running back role, and he will essentially just be an insurance running back, a great insurance policy, but an insurance running back backup, irrelevant for fantasy, for several years at the very least. It's so way too early to know. I mean, football, the NFL, things change like crazy. Ken Walker could go down to a season ender next week, and then we all regret not taking the talent of Zach Charbonnet, but he is a little bit lower for me. I'm going to play someone who's also a backup, also a running back, and now I'm going to take him over Zach Charbonnet because next year Kenneth Walker is a Seahawk, and the next year Kenneth Walker is a Seahawk. But how much longer do we have Derrick Henry? And I think Tajay Spears has shown enough on the NFL field. We've seen him pull away from defenders. That speed has flashed. And I'm going to take Tajay Spears here in hopes that Derrick Henry gets out of the way soon. And in the meantime, he is not a completely irrelevant fantasy player. He's playing over 50% of snaps right now with Derrick Henry on the field. I think he's got a brighter future than guys that like Tank Bigsby. I really like Tank Bigsby. I think he's a talented guy, but he's not getting the opportunity and doesn't project to get much opportunity. Tajay Spears has it.
It's the hardest part of this exercise is taking the information that we have, these 7 weeks worth, and then making a projection forward of saying, here's what they can do. And Spears, it's hard to get on the NFL field in general when you're a rookie running back. And it's even harder when you're behind, one of the greatest running backs of this recent generation. And he's forcing his way on the field, not just as he's a scat back and he gets only like a couple of, like he's getting carries. He's getting like meaningful work for this team. So
running a lot of routes too, involved in the passing.
Yeah, it's target on 20% of his routes for a rookie running back. That is really, really good. So Jason takes him there at 204. He went 207 in our May draft. So we were high on him, but he's definitely shown out more than we thought. Betz, you are at the 205.
I hate this, but I'm going to take Quentin Johnson. I guess I'll end the slide here. There really isn't anything positive to say about what he's done this year. I mean, 0.6 yards per route run, that is woof. But it's the middle of the second round. This team needs him moving forward this year and next year with the Mike Williams injury, with the Keenan Allen getting older, contract stuff. So I'll take a shot in the first round wide receiver and hope it gets better. But if we go back to kind of the pre-draft process, remember we were talking about his production. It was a lot of manufactured screens, stuff like that. Like he was a very raw player. So I'm worried, but I'm not completely out quite yet. If he doesn't do anything for the rest of the year, then it's like, ooh, buddy. But in this point in the season, this exercise, I'll take him here.
He's a player that we kind of collectively said like, okay, so there's some flaws in his game. The last thing we saw was him against Georgia in the national title game just get destroyed. He was irrelevant. And then with the draft capital and the landing spot, we're like, well, I think we kind of have to meet in the middle. And that's kind of where I was like not over the top, but not against. And he kind of belonged in that tier. So it's hard to completely write him off. I think this is a good spot. I had him right here, Betz, in my rankings at 205. So I would have taken him if he was up next. Jason, where was he in yours?
He was the next man up in my rankings as well. Top of the list left over. And now there's like 2 or 3 names I'm really excited to have left. And then we kind of fall off a bit for me.
All right. So I will be less than exciting. I will take Zach Charbonnet here. I would have taken him another 2 spots ahead. So I considered him the last spot. So I will take Zach Charbonnet at the 206. I took Tank Bigsby here back in May. So Jason, you are now up.
There's 2 players I really, really like. I want both of them, and they're both named Michael. So I'm trying to decide, do I go with the higher draft capital, the better pedigree coming in at the less important position in Michael Mayer, or do I take what projects to be Kyler Murray's wide receiver 2 in Michael Wilson, a young offense that I think will ascend. And when push comes to shove, I think this was a really, really good tight end rookie class. We've already taken Dalton Kincaid. We've already taken Sam Laporta. I could easily see looking back 5 years from now and saying, the best one was who was thought to be best before the NFL draft, Michael Mayer. He's gotten on later. He didn't get off to quite the same start that Laporta did, but pre week 1, I would have taken Michael Mayer over him, and I love both guys, so I'll take Michael Mayer here.
All right, Betz.
I'm going to keep the tight end train rolling. I'm actually going to take Luke Musgrave with this pick. We're just desperate for difference-making tight ends, and these guys have all flashed that they could potentially turn into that. So it's been kind of an up-and-down season, a couple injuries for Musgrave, but earning an every down starting tight end role out of the gate, I think says a lot about him. So I'll take Luke Musgrave.
That's who I wanted.
That sound effect was we knew the subtext there. That was
that's
now I got to make a decision.
I figured Betz was just going to go, okay, Jason, you already did the spiel for me. I'll take Michael Wilson, but no, you didn't. So here's my thoughts about Michael Wilson. Maybe you can give some more context because he's probably going to the next 2 picks, right? Like if I don't take him, you're going to take him, right?
Correct.
So what is he good at? Like I'm not trying to be mean. I'm like trying to figure out what is his tool in his tool belt that he can be a difference maker for fantasy football. Like I think on the NFL field, he's been fine. I did find a really funny stat that his yards per route run against man coverage this year is 0, but teams don't play man that much. But I just thought it was funny, like 0.00.
Yeah. I think his advantage right now for fantasy purposes in what's going to help score fantasy points is 6'2", 213. It's his body type. It's his archetype. This offense, when Kyler comes back, I think will be good. You've got Hollywood on one side and Michael Wilson on the other. So, I don't think Michael Wilson is going to be a superstar for fantasy football. I think he's like a poor man's T. Higgins. He's got good body positioning. He's got good size and good strength. He doesn't quite have the same speed or the elite athleticism that T. Higgins has, but I kind of see him more like that. Just a solid, big-bodied player like Robert Woods, who was very fantasy relevant for many years. If he's in the right system, if he stays as the wide receiver 2, honestly, my biggest fear in drafting Michael Wilson is what does this wide receiver room look like next year when the Cardinals have 2 really, really high draft picks. That's like my biggest fear here is Marvin Harrison. It's like if Marvin Harrison shows up on this team and you've got Hollywood and Marvin Harrison, then Michael Wilson goes poof. So that's the one big fear I have. If he stays as the wide receiver 2 for a Kyler Murray-led Cardinals, or even a Caleb
Williams
Caleb Williams-led offense, then I'm fine with that.
The player, so you gave a good spiel. I will let you take Michael Wilson because I would take Jaden Reed here first, right ahead of him, I feel like he's been pretty consistent as a rookie. I mean, that touchdown he had this past week was fortunate that it bounced off Dobbs' hands and, went into his hands. But I think he's been consistent. He's been targeting the red zone a ton. He's been good in targets per out run number. I feel like he's solid. I don't know if his ceiling is nearly as high as some of the other ones, but I feel like Jaden Reed could end up being a competent flex type player, carve out like a Zay Jones role where he's like, okay, I can put this guy in my flex on the right matchups in the right week as this team progresses. Who knows how they feel about Jordan Love beyond this year, but I think Jaden Reed has been solid. You're probably happy if you got him in your rookie draft. So Jaden Reed here, and Jason, you have Michael Wilson?
Yeah, Michael Wilson will be my pick.
All right, Betsy, you're up at 211.
All right, I am looking at a couple of running backs. Neither has flashed a ton yet. I'm looking at Roschon Johnson or Tank Bigsby. With Bigsby, we've talked about it already. Like, we like him. The draft capital was there, relatively speaking. But Etienne has just been great, and there's no reason to go away from him. So It's tough. I think I'm going to lean Roshan Johnson here and just hope that he can take over that job when he gets healthy off this concussion, and then moving forward, really take control of that backfield next year. Whereas with Tank Bigsby, I still think that's slightly in the range of outcomes, but Travis Etienne would have to have an injury or play horribly down the stretch or something to lose his job. So I'll take the shot on the guy that I think could earn a starting role.
Okay, so I considered Roshan was right there. I didn't really consider Tank, but I think that makes sense. You know, if you're redrafting, you need a running back. But I just want to give a little love to Jalen Hyatt because he's worked his way into being, okay, he's part of the rotation, to, okay, he's a starting wide receiver, to, okay, we're seeing some explosive plays. And that's one of the few things that he was drafted for, is big explosive plays, tracking the ball down the field. You know, he's averaging over 20 yards per catch. Love it. Could that be nothing? Sure. But it's the kind of like nitro that I love having on a roster, that if you have the right matchup, it's the Rashid Shaheed, Jalen Hyatt. If you're in a double flex league, I love these players because you're not counting on them, but you can kind of throw them in there. So I think Jalen Hyatt, I thought he was just going to be dust the entire year. He's slowly becoming a player that like, oh, he's actually matters for them on the field and they're designing plays for him. So Jalen Hyatt will be my pick right here at the 212. And I want to kind of mine out any other names that are on your radar here that didn't make the cut. So,
yeah, for me, the one name that sticks out, you look at, we drafted 4 first-round rookie wide receivers. We drafted Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, Marvin Mims, all the second-round guys. We drafted Tank Dell and Jalen Hyatt, the third-round guys. We got, and Josh Downs and Michael Wilson, all third-round guys. We got Puka, a fifth-round guy. But sitting there as the 5th wide receiver drafted in the NFL draft, Jonathan Mingo is a second-round pick that has actually been receiving targets, hasn't done much with them, but he's had a couple of, 7, 8 target games. He got injured. So that's the one guy that I don't know what to make of him. Part of me has the feeling of like Sky Moore. Well, you're getting the opportunity and you're not doing much with it. But we're also only 7 weeks in right now. This isn't a full season sample size, and he got the injury in the middle. So he's a name that I think is very interesting to pay attention to and watch as the rest of the season unfolds, because he's overlooked.
Yeah. Kendre Miller belongs on this list, somewhere around here, beginning of the 3rd, just because he's a running back who breathes, and that's what matters. I want to ask you about Bryce Young. Our biggest issue wasn't, is he good at football, but how is it going to translate to fantasy? That's what we were always worried. Like, how does his skill set translate to someone who runs enough and, has enough passing volume? And you haven't really seen that, other than Adam Thielen has enjoyed it a lot. So are you still kind of in the same spot of like, hey, this is kind of our evaluation of Bryce Young? Like, he's fine, but he will never be good enough for fantasy football.
Yeah, but Bryce Young is borderline irrelevant to me in single quarterback leagues. When you've got guys like in a single quarterback league, I've got 4 of these guys on my roster. I don't when my star quarterback that I want to start every week, if it's Joe Burrow or it's Jalen Hurts or it's Justin Herbert, when he's got a bye week or an injury, then okay, I got to decide, do I want to throw in a Derek Carr or a Brock Purdy or a CJ Stroud, or these guys? Is like Bryce Young's never doing it. Not in the rest of his career is never going to be a star fantasy football option, in my opinion. So does he have a place? Yeah, bye week streaming candidate, and obviously in a super flex, all those tier of borderline unstartable quarterbacks become very important, very relevant. Baker Mayfield today is like, oh yes, good, I've got someone to start my super flex. So yeah, that's where Bryce Young matters. Otherwise, no, he doesn't look good, man. He's made throws where you go, wait, this wasn't supposed to be the concern. Like, he's supposed to be a smart football mind and see the field well and It's like, what did you see where you threw it to the place where only a defender was? He just looked bad to me.
The strength of that team was supposed to be a defense that was fine and a running game, and it's been neither of those. And then it's kind of just morphed into, let's feed Adam Thielen a ton. So it's just a different route than what we thought. Betz, any thoughts here on just guys that missed the cut?
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on Jaleel McLaughlin, who, is kind of this undersized, low draft capital, undrafted guy, actually, that has kind of had some flashes with Denver, but has carved out a role and looks explosive when he gets opportunity. So I don't know what to think because, Javonte Williams will continue to get healthier off the ACL. I think he's certainly well ahead at this point of Samaje Perine, who's kind of fallen out of favor. But I just wonder, is this kind of like a flash in the pan that will never happen again? Or could he be, a flex play, not just this year, but also like looking forward to next year?
I have a hard time with him because I feel like he's on a team that will give him a chance, but I wish he was on a different team that I could count on their offense actually like leveling up. And it's really hard to see a Sean Payton, Russell Wilson offense average more than 17 points a game. So he's almost like out of place for me where I'm not going to trade for the dude because he could just be literal dust as an undrafted free agent. But if he's on my team, I'm like, sweet, I got gold, a player that I didn't even know existed, a year ago. So I don't think he belongs close to the top 2 rounds, but if you wanted to take a shot in the 3rd round, if he's in this draft, like the 306 or 7, like that's kind of where I had him in my mind.
Yeah, makes sense.
I do think it was interesting. We'll get to post this on our website. You'll get to see our picks from May, our picks now, and who knows? By the time we do this again, we do our little rookie review every year in January and February. It could look even more different. So feel free to give us our thoughts if you want to do that. But that is going to do it for this episode of the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. Once again, go to jointhefoot.com if you want to get all of our resources and tool. And we will see you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.
What is Howler Brothers? Yes, we're an apparel company from Austin, Texas. But really, who are we? It's actually kind of hard to describe in words. Like a kung fu surf movie set in the Wild West with a dub reggae soundtrack starring all your best friends. Really, the best way to understand is to see for yourself. So swing by and take a look at our fall 2023 collection, featuring everything from pearl snap shirts to puffy jackets, fleece to flannel, at howlerbros.com.